Hello, in this HTML crash course video, we are going to be covering CSS. So what is CSS? Well, it stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Simply put, it's a way of styling your website. So if you want to add a background color, a background image, change the sizing of something, changing the positioning of something, simply put, the beautiful websites that you see they look like that because of CSS. This isn't really a tutorial or not an extensive CSS tutorial, but I will be creating a CSS crash course series as well, so check that out. So CSS, how do we start that? Do we put it in the body tag? Generally no, you'll either put it in the head tag within style tags, or you put it in a separate file or files, or just a mixture. It's totally up to you. Generally speaking, you want to abstract it into a separate CSS file, but I'm going to show you both methods. So first of all, actually before we even do that, let's put some elements here so we can actually use them and refer to them afterwards. So we're going to put a p tag, and in here we're going to put hello world, and then we're going to put another p tag, and in here I'm going to put paragraph 1, very long paragraph. And you know what, I'm going to put that famous Latin that you see in websites when they're in development and design mode, lorem ipsum, which stands for paint itself. So id equals, now I'm thinking, what's this id? Let me just write it out and then I'll explain to you. id 1. id is an attribute which allows you to uniquely refer to a element, essentially. Because if I were to refer to all p tags, if I were to refer to p as in the paragraph tag, it would affect all of the p tags. If I refer to id1, it will only affect this particular paragraph tag. You only have one id in any single page. You can have, so you can't have another element with the same id. You could have it with id2 but not id1. You might be thinking, okay, what if I were to have several paragraph tags but I wanted to affect, let's say, half of them? Do I do several IDs? No. Thankfully, there's another cool way of affecting multiple elements, and they don't have to be of the same type. So you could affect a paragraph tag, a div tag, an anchor tag, an image tag, a video tag, however you want. So what you do is add a class which allows you to identify, or I would say refer to, multiple different elements inside here. I'm just going to put paragraph 1, I'm going to put 2, yeah, 2, that's fine. I'm going to copy and paste this, change this to 3, and I'm going to change this to a div, and leave that as class 1. So if I refresh, it all looks the same pretty much. It's simply because I've got no styling on it at the moment. And another thing you may know or remember is if I were to put a h1 tag, for example, which is a header tag, and type in 56 in there, save that, refresh, you can see it's bigger, and that's because it's got inbuilt styling. So if I right click, this is the styling applied to it. So it's a display of blocks, so it's on its own line, it's a bigger font size, it's got margin, and the font weight is bold. So that's essentially what we're going to be doing, not necessarily this, but this sort of code. So to add CSS, just add it above here. You open up a style tag, and inside here we're going to put body, background. There are a whole heap of ways to affect CSS. I recommend checking out the W3 Schools website or the Mozilla Developer Network and having a look at all the different codes that you can use to affect different aspects of your website and different aspects of your element. It's fantastic. So we're going to put red. You might be thinking, what does this do? I think actually you should be able to guess. Body, so that refers to the body element, which is right here, and it sets it to the background color of red. So if I refresh, everything's red. Very simple stuff. So now you might be thinking, okay, we've got everything as red, but the black text doesn't quite go with the red or this shade of red. So let's change it to white. So how would we do that? What we can do is refer to the p tag and do color white, and color is referring to the text color. I've always thought this is confusing for beginners. It should be text dash color. Color should be, I think if anything, color should be the background color, but that's just my opinion. You can also replace the inbuilt colors with hexadecimal values. So if you know a bit more about that, you could do something like that'll be FF, which is the equivalent to white, but I'm just going to keep it simple. Save that, refresh, and as you see, it's now white. You might be thinking, why isn't this one white? And if we go down, have a look, it's not white because we've only referred to the p tag, and this is not a p tag, this is a div tag. So now let's refer to this ID one. So I'm going to do hash ID1 color green yellow. If I save that, that should only affect this particular p tag because it's unique to this one. Forgot to mention, when you're referring to an element, you just put the element name. When you're referring to an ID, you put hash. This is what indicates to the browser that you're affecting or trying to reference an ID. Then you put the ID name, and it is case sensitive, so be wary of that. Let's refresh, and as you can see, we've got this sort of green yellow color. Next, we're going to affect all of the class 1 classes. To affect a class, you do dot. Dot refers to a class, then the class name. So class 1, again, case sensitive. And in here, I'm going to put font dash size. We're going to increase the font size to 3EM, which are just universal units. You can put pixels as well. Refresh, and as you can see, it's affected all of the elements with the class 1 tag. Final thing I'm going to show you is something that I mentioned towards the start of this video, and that is having a separate file for CSS. It's recommended because, as you can see, we've already added quite a few lines here, and if you're trying to make a website, so I'll go into my education platform. If you start adding CSS to make it look something like this or make it look more appealing, you'll get a whole heap of CSS, and you don't want that mixed in with your HTML, which you won't just have a few lines like this. You'll have a lot of HTML. You'll probably mix it with JavaScript and PHP and God knows what else. So what you want to do is, I'm going to show you the best way of structuring your project. So right click, you want to do new folder, then CSS, and then in here you want to put all your CSS files. So right click, new file. I'm going to name it index.css. You don't need to have the same name as the file that you're referencing it from. I'm just going to call it index.css. And to actually before I do anything, I'm going to put some code in here. So what I'm going to do is put div. This will affect all the div tags, which is just this one right here. And in here, I'm going to put font-style italic save. So we're going to set the font, we're going to set it to italic. If I go back, refresh, you might be thinking it hasn't changed, and the reason is this file is separate. Just because it's in the same sort of project directory doesn't mean it's going to automatically link, because that's not the way it works, and that's not the way it should work. Because just in case you have other files in there for whatever reason, you don't want them to automatically be linking to your website. So to include a CSS file, you do in the head tag, you do link rel, which means relationship, and the relationship is a style sheet. Then you put type. For the type is text /CSS, and then you put href, which simply means where is the file. So this could be external on somebody else's website, like a content delivery network, for example. That's very common practice to use a CSS or a JavaScript file from a content delivery network. I'm going to keep it simple. It's in our CSS folder. We can't just put index.css like that. We save that, refresh. It doesn't do anything because this doesn't exist in our root directory. To reference CSS, we do CSS / save it, refresh, and as you can see, it is now italic. So that's it. There's two ways of doing it: using a style sheet, using style tags, or putting it in an external file or files. I recommend this method right here, putting it in an external file. This is great just for quickly testing, but not a long-term solution by any means. So that's it for our HTML crash course video on CSS. If you liked it, please let us know. If you didn't, please let me know so I can improve it for the next time I create a video. And as usual, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.